Hi, and welcome to video 3 of the dplyr series. Today we're going to talk about the verb select. What select allows us to do is to select which columns we want to keep. So for instance, if I do, let's say it's also going to specify the order that I want the columns. So let's suppose I select departure time, departure delay, carrier, airtime, distance, and destination and arrival time. Okay, so this says select out of the flights data set these things. Okay, so that's the FL data set. So when I do that, I can see those are the values that I got back. Okay, now but if I look at FL, I haven't changed it, right? Because I didn't assign that to anything. That just did that for what I wanted to see on the screen or what I wanted to analyze. So if I wanted to keep it, let's say I want these things because those are going to be the things that I'm going to be looking at the most. So if I want to do that, let's just let's keep let's call it FL red for flights reduced. This is going to give me a reduced data set. So now I'm going to store that in a new variable. Okay. So another way I can do this same thing is instead of putting FL as my first argument here, what I will frequently do is pipe in the data set. That it also helps me keep from getting confused. These are all of the inputs for select that's operating on the flights data set. So you take the flight data set, then you select these items. Okay, so it just sounds better that way. I could look at the first entry, so I can do head and tell it I just want the first row, and that would give me the first row of my flights data set. Okay, so another way I can do is I can select groups of columns. So instead I could say, let's see, FL, you don't have to put a space there, but it's better for readability. I could say I want to select, let's say, everything from the flight to the time hour. Okay, and that'll give me those columns starting with the flight and going through time hour. Okay, I can also say which columns I want to not select, which ones I want to drop. So another way to do that would be, let's see, see if I can copy this over. Well, I guess it's not going to let me. I could do FL2 just because I'm out of things to call it. Oops. FL2, and I'm going to pipe in the flights data set. Just doing this to save myself some typing. Oops, that's not what I want. Okay, let's just do it this way. I'm going to say I want everything except, so I'm going to do the minus. That means leave off that stuff that I just showed you. Okay, and I can also leave off multiple things. I can also leave off, let's say, year through scheduled departure time. And if I look now at FL2, what's left? Those are the things that were left. When I left off those series of columns, that's what I had left. Okay. Now there's a number of helper functions that you can use with your flights, with your select verb. And I just show you some of those. Starts with, we'll match anything that begins with those letters, ends with, contains, Matches, if you already know regular expressions, you can use that. If not, don't worry about that. Just know that you can do it when we get to that, which we'll cover when we talk about strings. You can do num range. So you can put the character x and then 1 to 3, and that'll match x1, x2, and x3. You can do one of some vector. Another helper is the everything command. So if I did, a lot of times I'll use that to reorder things and then keep everything else in its place. So this way I'm specifying that I want the carrier first, then the distance, then start at the beginning and do everything else that's in the variable list. Okay, so now we're up to exercise 2, and you want to do this exercise, stop and work this exercise, and put your answers in your R Markdown document, then knit it, and then eventually when you finish this whole section, you will upload that document, okay? So I want you to look at this, putting a variable name multiple times. What happens? What happens if I use any of? What does that function do? And then look at this code and see, does that surprise you? Okay, answer those questions for exercise 2. And then when you come back after working exercise, then you'll also have, exercise 3, which is here. So here you're going to use H flights. And I want you to only show the columns that have the word time or delay in the variable name, or have the carrier ID. So your output should look something like this when you get done with that. Okay, come back and we'll talk about, in the next video, we'll talk about the verb filter, which will select certain rows of our data set.